What is going on, my beautiful people? Welcome to yet again another episode of the Pivot Mindset Podcast. My name is Justin. I am your host. And I'm excited for another episode. We are staying consistent with this thing. I believe this is episode 28 of the podcast. If you are new here, if this is your first time listening, we here believe at the Pivot Mindset Podcast that life is all about the pivots, and those who decide to make the pivots decide to become successful. Your success, how you build your dream life, is based on how consistently you can make the pivots, how often you can make the adjustments that life requires for us to make, And so, I'm glad to have you here. As always, we super appreciate any likes. Please give this podcast a rating and review. Any shares that you can make. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm actually got some podcast merch. So shout out to Jackie and Haley, two individuals that I work alongside with at Xerox, and they actually made this for me. So this is not available for sale, but we are planning to get some merch going pretty soon. But yeah, man, just excited. And also, we've got a fairly new setup. So if you're watching this as well on YouTube, you'll see I'm actually hanging out in my kind of dining room area. And so just getting outside of my normal office, my normal setup, mixing things up a bit, nothing like some new flavor, making the pivot, making a shift. So in this episode, though, I want to talk about something that as we look to continue to be the best version of ourselves, and as we do what it takes to make the adjustments in life, I want to kind of reverse engineer this. So in this episode, I really want to come from a negative approach, right? So people often talk about what it takes to be successful and what you have to have in order to be successful. But in this episode, I want to talk about what you have to have in order to suffer for the rest of your life. So my goal is to create a framework where you may sometimes think, how can I be successful? Or what do I need to do to actually be successful? And sometimes you may run your tires trying to figure out, right, like how to actually do that. But in this episode, I want to kind of reverse engineer, and I want to have your brain thinking on the opposite side. And if you could solve for this, then we can answer the questions that you need answered in your life. And so I want to break down, I would say, 8 things that you should do if you plan to suffer for the rest of your life. I'm going to give you 8 things that you'll want to make sure that you do if suffering is something that you want to do for the rest of your life. So let's dive right in. So the first thing that you should do if you want to suffer for the rest of your life is that I would get addicted to chemicals. I would get addicted to alcohol. I would get addicted to drugs. I would get addicted to weed. I would even get addicted to coffee. I would get addicted to anything that would alter my state of being, something that I could not be the best version of myself if I didn't ingest. The first thing that I would do if I wanted to suffer for the rest of my life is I would get addicted to something. I would get addicted to some kind of chemical, some kind of, again, alcohol. I would get addicted to drugs. I would get addicted to weed. That's the first thing that I would do if I wanted to suffer. Let's go to number 2. The second thing that I would do if I wanted to suffer for the rest of my life is I would envy everybody. I would envy every single person that was around me. I would look at someone's life and I would begin to hate them because they did that. If I wanted to suffer the rest of my life, I would look at people that are succeeding. I would look at people on social media. I would look at people in my community, and I would do my best to envy them. And not just envy them, but I would do my best to pull them down. I would hate on them. I would talk about them. I would talk behind their back. I would backstab them. I would probably even smile in their face and then say something like when they're outside of the room. So envy is something that if you want to suffer, you should be envying everyone around you. This is so weird to me going through this way because so much of my life, right, and so much of how I think is so opposite of this. So I'm literally like, it almost feels like I'm brushing my teeth with like my left hand. It feels so unorthodox, but we're going to get through it for today. My goal, again, is to really help you think in a different way so that you can reverse engineer and back into the things that you should do to create the kind of life that you want, right? All right, so let's go to number 3. If I wanted to suffer for the rest of my life, the third thing that I would do, here is the suffering blueprint, is I would hold on to tons of resentment. Oh my gosh. I would remember everything that I did wrong in my life. I remember everybody that did me wrong in my life. I would remember and I would soak in all of my failed opportunities or the things that I did wrong, or I would have so much resentment for what I didn't do, and maybe the school I didn't get into, or the neighborhood I didn't live in, and all that stuff. I would hold so much resentment for my life and for the things and the people that are around me. Here's the fourth thing. Let's keep going in. Here's the fourth thing. If I wanted to be unreliable, if I wanted to suffer for the rest of my life, I would be unreliable and inconsistent. I would be the most inconsistent person that you have ever met. I would be the person that I would be good one day, the next day I'm not. I would show up on time one day, the next day I don't. I would not be someone that you can count on. If I wanted to build a life of suffering, if I wanted to build a life of pain and failure, I would be the most inconsistent, and unreliable person that you know. Obviously, the opposite of that is being reliable, inconsistent, right? So if you do stack reliability and consistency in your life, you will literally get the exact opposite, right? So let's dive to the fourth thing. Let's dive into the fifth thing. The fifth thing that I would do is I would overspend my income. If I wanted to be I want to be a big failure, I would overspend everything that I make. I would live on way more than I actually make. If I made $100,000, I would live on $120,000. I would live on $150,000. I would do that in order to create long suffering. Hey, and even to go a little bit deeper there, and here's probably a hack on the opposite side, is if you are again, everybody wants often to be a millionaire, right? And they want to create the life of their dreams. And I get it. One of the easiest ways to solve for that is you have two answers or two problems that you can solve, and they're on opposite side of the spectrum. You could either solve the money problem. So you can either do something that makes you more money. So if you're living paycheck to paycheck at $50,000, you could do something on side, start a side business, get a second job, sell something, and make an extra $30,000. And you would do something wise with that extra 30 that you gained to be able to set yourself up in the future. Or simultaneously, you could reduce your living expenses. You could live on significantly less. So here's an idea that often we don't think about. What if you could find a way to live on 10 to 20% of your income? Because truly, if you could live on 10 to 20% of your income, you're wealthy. You could essentially go 7 to 8 years without making any more money and live off of that money. If you could live on $20,000 and you had $100,000 in the bank, right? Like you could live on what's my math there? You could live on 5 years without ever having to make another dime. So instead of always trying to grow your income, something that you can do right now in a very short amount of time is you could literally cut your expenses significantly and immediately become wealthy. If you make $100,000 a year, if you could find a way to live on $20,000 to $30,000 of that, you could find a way to go 4 to 5 years without needing to make any extra money, right? If you can just find a way to live on 10, 20, 30% of your income. So some of you may not have the easiest shot of tripling, quadrupling, 10xing your income in a short amount of time. But a lot of you could have a great shot at reducing your expenses by 60, 70, 80%. Now, to do both of these things, you're going to have to be crazy, right? Like to make to 10 extra income, you're going to have to do things that people around you aren't doing, as well as to significantly reduce your expenses. You're going to have to do things that people are around you aren't doing. So you got to be crazy to do both, right? So to get back to the point though, I would overspend. So in essence, the opposite point is I wouldn't underspend. I would greatly live on a lot less than what I make if I wanted to be successful. All right, let's keep going. The sixth thing, if I wanted to suffer for the rest of my life, the sixth thing that I would do is I would learn only from my own mistakes. I would not learn from anybody else's mistakes but my own. I would have to only learn from things that I tried, me actually putting action, failing, and then learning, taking action, failing, and learning. I would not read books. I would not listen to YouTube videos. I would not go to seminars. I would not be a part of masterminds. I would only learn from my own mistakes if I wanted to live a life full of failure and full of suffering. The seventh thing that I would do, and we're rounding the plane here, we've got two more. The seventh thing that I would do is I would quit when I had my third or fourth big failure in life. I would quit when I failed for the third time. I would quit when I failed for the fourth time if I wanted to live a life of suffering, a life of failure. You see, I believe so often it's so common for many of us to quit on our second failure, third failure, fourth failure. But if you look up the greats and if you look at people that have succeeded and accomplished significant things in their lives, you'll learn that rarely did someone succeed at their first shot. Often they've known what it is to fail multiple times, what it is to have 5, 6, 7 failed businesses before the 8th business becomes successful, what it is to have 9, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bad jobs until they find the perfect dream job for them, what it is to live in multiple states before they find the perfect state, what it is to date multiple people before you marry the right person, right? Like we often believe underutilize and value the importance of failure. Failure really is the term that we define it as. And I believe our society has painted failure to be something that's much more catastrophic than what it really is. Failure really is the thing that you need to endure to take the next steps. Because if you know that whatever you want is on the 7th failure, you would get through the 6 failures very fast. If you knew that it only took 7 failures, you had to fail at 7 things before you made it really and built the kind of life that you want, you would hurry up and fail through those things. And you would not make such big deals out of the failures that you had because they all were necessary to get to where you got to go. But it's easy to believe it in that story, but that's just how life is. Some of your success won't happen until you fail 3 times. You may have to fail 2 more times for you to accomplish the kind of life that you want. And if you are not taking action and not building the kind of life that you want because you're scared of failure, you are really, in essence, missing the good stuff. You're missing the good part of the life that you want to live because you're afraid to take those steps and take that risk to build the life that you know is on the other side of taking action. As a result, having failures, but being able to know that you are only 1, 2, 3 failures away from the life that you want to live. And then here's the last one. The last thing that I would do if I wanted to suffer for the rest of my life is I would crack under pressure no matter what happens. I would crack under pressure when times got hard. I would back out of things when I didn't feel comfortable. I would change and lessen my integrity when I felt pressured to do so. I would crack under pressure when the moment got real and I needed to step up. That's the moment that I would fail. That's the moment that I would fall apart. It's easy to be a champion when you play on a good team and when you've only seen things work well and you're part of the winning team. But it's hard to be a champion when you've got to take the final shot and the game is on the line. And so I would want to build the opposite life. I truly want to build a life where I don't crack under pressure. I actually rise and step up to the occasion when things get hard. I actually rise and step up to the occasion when all odds are against me and when people are doubting me and failure looks to be right on the other side. Because like I said in the last point, I'm often 1, 2, 3, 4 failures away from accomplishing the kind of life that I want. So I would do everything that I could to do that, and knowing that I would miss every shot that I didn't take. But the thing that I won't do is I won't crack under pressure. You could get me to do a lot of things, but you're not going to get me to crack under pressure. So if you want to suffer, I encourage you to crack under pressure. I encourage you when the times get tough that you bow down. I encourage you that when things get hard that you back out. All right. And so let's review these 8 things. Again, if I want to suffer for the rest of my life, I would get addicted to chemicals. I would get addicted to drugs. I would get addicted to alcohol. I would get addicted to coffee. I would get addicted to weed. I would find something to get addicted to if I wanted to suffer, if I wanted to live a life of failure. I would envy everyone. I would hold on to tons of resentment. I would be unreliable and inconsistent. I would overspend all of my income. I would live on twice as much as I actually make. I would learn from only my mistakes. I would quit when I had my third or fourth failure in life, and I would crack under pressure, and like that would be my bow out. I would crack under pressure when everything is on the line. All right. And so, man, I hope that this episode is something that you guys were able to take some information from, take some good nuggets. Again, for us, we believe that pivoting and building the kind of life that we want is so important. And so I hope this isn't pushing you to like think differently, right? It's all about mindset and the way that we walk every single day, how our mind is wired. Our minds, guys, is so powerful. This is the whole premise behind the podcast is that our minds are so powerful that if you can control your mind, and if not just control it, but if you can constantly feed and pour into your mind, you could literally create whatever life that you want. You have so much power within your mindset. Your mindset, that how your mind is set. If I break up the word, how your mind is set, the setting of your mind, the life that you want is happens when your mind is set at the right level. If you don't have the life that you want, it's because the setting is off in your mind. There's some kind of setting that is incorrect, that's improperly aligned to getting the kind of life that you want. And so if we can really put ourselves in the place to set our minds properly. If I'm at home and it's too cold, I set the temperature to be comfortable for me, because I want the temperature has to be set for me to get the actual experience in the atmosphere that I want. And so think of your mind as a thermostat, and think of the fruit that you create as a result as the experience, as the atmosphere. And so some of you have just set your mind. Some of you set your mind a week ago. Some of you set your mind a year ago. Some of you may have set your mind 5 years ago, and the fruit is on its way. If you set your mind right, if your mind has been set properly, if you're committed to living a pivoted mindset and living a pivoted life, your what you want is on the way. And so to you, I just say, hang on. And I just say, clinch on to what's next, and clinch on for the best that's yet to come. Because just like I know what's happening in my house, the minute that I crank the heat up, it's not going to come on immediately. It's not going to get hot immediately. But if I give it 3, 4, 5 minutes, it's going to be the exact temperature that I want it to be. All right. So thank you for listening to this episode. And remember, life is all about the pivots. And those who decide to make the pivots decide to become successful. I'll check you out in the next episode. Peace.